everybody, welcome to an Around the Lens interview. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. Joining me for this one-on-one interview is Michael Dahan. He is a filmmaker who has recently come out with the film Yes, Repeat, No, which we'll be talking about extensively. But we'll also be getting into a little bit of his filmmaking career and talking about kind of things that drive him and what brought him into the career in the first place. So, Michael, thank you for joining our program.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, really happy to have you, and again, happy to have you on the show. In case you haven't seen it already, Michael was a panelist on our roundtable discussion and brought a lot of great insight to a number of different topics that I think were very relevant, and talked a lot about basically what we're going to a little bit talk about in more detail today.
Awesome.
But let's get right into, I think most people want to know about is the movie Yes, Repeat, No. That's the movie I had the opportunity to watch, and I really had some interesting kind of thoughts and ideas and questions I wanted to kind of pose with you about it. But since it's your film, why don't you tell our audience what is Yes, Repeat, No in your terms?
It's hard to describe, but let's say it's an
It is hard to
experimental.
describe.
Yeah, it's an experimental narrative. The jumping off point of the film, or the inspiration for the film, I would say, is a man named Giuliano Mercamis. It's not really a biography. It's more like an allegory using his life. He's interesting to me, and was interesting to me, still remains interesting to me, because his father was a Palestinian Christian and his mother was an Israeli Jew. So what I thought was really fascinating was just this guy is the living embodiment of this conflict, right? In his being, and kind of experienced all of the fraught tension that came with that. And so I kind of came upon his story when I saw this video on YouTube where he actually predicts or foreshadows, kind of tongue in cheek, in almost a joking way, how he thought he was going to die. He says, "I'll tell you how I'm going to die. Some effed up Palestinian's going to come up to me and he's going to shoot me in the head." It turns out a few years later that actually happens. It's unknown whether it was someone who's Palestinian or Israeli or what have you. It's inconclusive who actually killed him, and the story of like who it might have been is as interesting. And I thought that was kind of fascinating. Just those two things made me think like, wow, there's got to be a movie here. So that's where that started.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a very interesting figure, and it was interesting in trying how you were trying to capture the different facets of him as a character and as a person in the different various roles of his life. And you present the film in what I think is a very sort of stark, minimalist way
Yeah,
that kind of tears down all the preconceptions of what a film is and what should be and how it's formatted, and it kind of, I would say, walks the line between like stage play and film almost.
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if you intended it was it originally a stage play in your mind, or
No, I
was it
mean
always a film?
a lot of people have asked me that. It actually was always conceived as something of a conceptual film. My background is in theater. I started, by directing theater. I always loved the process of theater, the kind of discovering what a script was about in rehearsal, like the extensive work with actors and really trying to figure it out. I'm really a fan of filmmakers like Mike Lee, who works with actors in rehearsal and then will go back and rewrite the script day by day as they're rehearsing based on stuff that comes out of rehearsal. So I really wanted to find a way to work like that in terms of the process. And one of the things about filmmaking that's always frustrated me is the kind of, you got to shoot the shot, you set it up, we're done with that shot, now we're going to do this other shot, we're going to do a couple lines, everybody take a break for 45 minutes, reset the lights, reset the
Yeah,
camera.
yeah.
Like you lose a lot of momentum, and frankly you don't get a ton of rehearsal time. So part of this was trying to set up the conditions where we could literally just shoot for extended periods of time. And that's, we had 10 shooting days, and
10 days.
yeah,
Okay.
we'd do about 6 hours of shooting per day, but we had like 5 cameras going, 4 on dolly tracks, a revolving stage, trying to make this small black box of a space pretty dynamic, having people be able to do walk and talks and move around, but still be in a very confined space. So a lot of it was the limitations of what we had, which is not a lot of money, single location,
Yep.
group of actors that we could only afford for 10 days at scale, You know, not wanting to do a lot of resetting, wanting to have one kind of lighting grid that we just kept with and just make sure that everything was flexible. It's just like, how can we create a situation where we can experiment and then film it while we're doing it? So some of it is kind of a documentary of the making of a film, but a lot of
Yeah.
it is just the performance of a script that is written when we start, but gets, transforms through improvisation and through things that we add. It's like it's a kind of a living, breathing thing, which for me as a filmmaker was a real challenge because so much of filmmaking is about controlling the outcome, and this is very little control in terms of what the actual outcome would be.
Yeah, no, I definitely felt the sort of almost scattershot nature of what I was watching
Totally.
because you'd see this somewhat like tightly controlled narrative at certain times, mostly driven by the woman behind the glass, I would
Yeah,
say,
the director.
the director. And like she seemed to be the one driving the narrative, so to speak. And then you'd have moments where, in the film is mostly in black and white, except for
Yeah,
various few segments where it's in color,
right.
where I believe are the behind the scenes,
Totally.
right?
Yeah, that was a different crew shooting with different cameras and color, and because we wanted to make sure that people understood when we were in the film and then when we were outside of the film. The stuff with the me talking to them was not scripted, but it
Right.
becomes kind of intertwined with the scripted stuff, which was scripted but also evolving during the shoot, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like again the confusion and the blurring between whether it's experimental, documentary, real life performance, rehearsal, that's completely intentional, right? Because I think that's the kind of confusion that is generative when you're talking about things like identity or kind of political affiliation, right? Everybody wants to say that it's very clear and the boundaries are distinct and it's black and white or us and them and good and bad. But in reality, I think the lived experience of identity and even political affiliation or what you believe in is a lot less clear and distinct. And that's
Right.
kind of what we were trying to investigate, without having a lot of answers, but just trying to create it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you definitely explored a lot of interesting topics there. So the idea came from a real life story of this man. What was his name again? Julian?
Giuliano Mercamis, he started out as an actor in the 1980s, Middle Eastern actor. And some of the stuff that I thought was really interesting is the kind of parts that were available to Middle Eastern actors, men and women, frankly, in the
Hmm.
1980s was very limited, right? Like you were there and often very stereotyped. So it was like, warlord number two, jihadi number three, terrorist
Right.
number one, like that kind
Of
of thing.
course.
Or in a lot of the films that he acted in for a director named Amos Gitai, Israeli IDF soldiers. So
Yeah.
basically, it was like he was all of those things, and could pass as Israeli or could pass as Arab or Palestinian, and he was actually both of those things. So I thought it was really interesting that based on where he was, the context, he could be a different person or perform differently, and I think that's kind of true about the way most of us kind of understand our identity. Is it's like when I'm at work, I'm a certain person, and then when I teach, I'm a certain person. When I'm with my 3-year-old, I'm a certain person. They're very different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The stereotyping of Middle Eastern actors in Hollywood is pretty renowned in that,
Totally.
again, there was only a small little window of roles they could play. And it was either like the stereotypical, like,
Right.
Middle Eastern person with the
Right.
accent
Right.
or terrorist or, ne'er-do-well, right? There's very like few hero roles. And I was listening to an audiobook from one of the actors who tried to break through that stereotype and has done a really good job about it. I'm blanking on his name at the moment, but he was in Van Wilder. He's the
Okay.
the Indian guy in Van Wilder, or the plays the Indian guy in
Right.
that, and he just talked about how just like trying to break through this stereotypical narrative. So it's interesting to kind of see that from this perspective of someone who did it in the '80s.
Yeah, and I think it kind of frustrated Giuliano as a performer, and I think what ultimately motivated him to also do other things, like become an activist and start his theater, because that's really kind of what he evolved into. Was he started this kind of activist theater in Jenin called the Freedom Theater, which still exists, and the kind of mandate and mission for that was to teach Palestinian youth, children and teenagers, how to kind of express their activism in a nonviolent way. He called it a cultural intifada, right? So that they could just deal with the stress and trauma of their everyday experience in a way that wasn't, destructive. But just that very fact made him kind of problematic to his community, right? To the community in Jenin, because putting teenagers on stage together, number one, highly controversial. Making boys cross dress for theater parts, which is pretty common in theater, in the tradition of
Right.
theater. That's always been a
Sure.
very common thing. But that in itself was, radically, just exposed him to a lot of criticism. So I think that was kind of created this environment where I think he was helping these children kind of process this trauma, but at the same time, had people in Jenin very suspicious of him, thinking, is he working with the Israelis? Is he a spy for the Israelis, right? And what is he doing to our children? And Israelis thinking he must be a collaborator, right? He must be working with Palestinians in some kind of nefarious way. So when he gets killed, it's really impossible to assess who actually did it, because there were so many people who could have had a motive to do it,
Sure.
whether they were Israeli or Palestinian.
Right. No, absolutely. So when kind of developing the film, what made you go with the pseudo audition style and the abstract concept of the woman behind the glass, the director, because it's like there's no real barrier between them.
It's all
Like
fictional, right?
it's just a facade, and like you don't even like
You see, you
build
don't see,
walls.
right,
Yeah, you don't. There's
right.
no like. So I'm just curious, what was kind of the logic there? What were you trying to represent by showcasing essentially
Yeah,
everything
the
behind the curtain?
Well, this is like a kind of I guess in the tradition of Marxist filmmaking, right, where you kind of own up to the fabricated nature of film, and the reason to do that is somehow you're kind of exposing the machinery of manipulation that exists. I
Okay.
mean, for me specifically in this film, first of all, I knew that this subject matter is really difficult to handle well. So often it's heavy-handed. Anytime you try to engage with political material, it's like, how do I not hit people over the head with like a point of view or a message, or like that was really something I was concerned with, because my kind of experience being Israeli, growing up in Israel for the first 8 years of my life, and
Mm,
then coming to the United States, is that I don't feel like I'm one or the other. I feel like I'm kind of in between, or not enough of either to kind of own it. I have a very emotional connection to Israel. It's the place I was born, but of course I'm also very aware of everything that's been happening, and troubled by it, right? So how do you deal with that in a way that doesn't like make people feel like you're preaching to them? And one of the things that I thought was really interesting about Giuliano is that he is all these things, and how do you kind of dramatize all these things that he is? This is not a biography of his life. This is really just kind of an allegory that uses him and his kind of interesting biographical experience to kind of open up this issue. And so it becomes this thing where it's like, okay, well, if I just make it a competition between actors who are trying to get a role,
mhm.
that's
Yeah.
immediately, puts these people into conflict. And then they're arguing about acting and about things that people understand without feeling like you're coming at them with like a sermon. And invariably, if Middle Easterners are in a room together or in a contest about something, conversations will happen, right? And it's impossible for these things to not kind of break out into these discussions or debates. And so the conflict and the political situation was always going to seep through. I wanted to kind of seep through the cracks of these conversations and interactions that they would have, and a lot of them are interactions and conversations that just happened, right? There, a lot of
Okay.
stuff is improvised. Like there's a
Yeah.
script, but like there's times where we cut, and we keep rolling because we're just having conversations about the script, or I'm trying to give Salome direction, and it suddenly becomes part of the film because we're filming it. Because maybe her reading of a line is a little too pointed or a little too, directly one-sided, and so we're trying to get some nuance out of it. So the idea that I wanted to create something that was more accessible about some political issue, but wouldn't hit people over the head. That's kind of where the three actors in a room comes in because I think that's easy to relate to. The fact that we did this in a kind of open set is really kind of a meta cinematic technique that's just trying to own up to the fact that this is a lot of this is fabricated, right? And
Hmm.
even the way that we construct our identities is kind of invention, right? Which is not to say that it's inauthentic. It's just to say that it's kind of you're constantly negotiating who you are. And Giuliano, more than anybody else, right, was always negotiating like how Israeli do I need to come off in these circles of people, and how activist and pro-Palestinian do I need to be in these circles, and that's really he's a public figure in that way, and I think it's very different than Giuliano in the theater space or Giuliano when he was an IDF soldier. I mean, the guy started out as an IDF soldier, right?
Right.
Like, so he traversed a kind of a tremendous kind of trajectory of who he was,
Yeah.
and then some of it is practical. Some of it is like, how do you shoot a movie in 10 days? Without having to worry about resetting cameras. Okay, well, what if we just show the cameras? What if we don't care about showing
Yep.
the cameras, right? What if we
Yep.
make it a situation where they end up being filmed and all of a sudden the cameras are integral to it? Oh, great. That means we don't have to reset. That means we don't have to relight, right? And as soon as you start doing that, it's not about like every day is not about what do we have to accomplish today? Like, what are the pages we have to accomplish? It's more like, hey, we're going to experiment and shoot everything. And at the end of the day, we're going to have footage. And at the end of 10 days, we're going to have a lot of footage. And then
Yeah.
there's going to be a movie in there, right? So it wasn't a conventional process, right? Because we weren't hoping to get, 5 pages a day.
No, it definitely doesn't sound like any conventional set I've worked on.
Yeah.
But then again, I haven't done improv as a concept in any of the narrative filmmaking I've done. I mean, I've done documentary and I've done narrative, but everything was very structured.
Yeah.
We did a film in 18 days and we had, it was much more traditional in nature where you have different locations and setups and lighting. Oh my God, the lighting
Yeah.
setups.
So
Jeez.
it's all the time. It eats
Yeah.
everything, right? And
It,
then
it's
you're
am-
like,
it's
okay,
amazing how little time is actually spent acting for the actors
yeah,
and directing actors.
yes,
It's mostly just, okay, move the camera here. All right,
I
let's
know.
break for 30 minutes while the
And this is
lighting
your
team does
spot.
their thing.
Yeah, and this you got to
Yeah.
hit this spot and say the line. I That frustrates me. That's the part of theater that I try to bring into this. Like when you're rehearsing a play, you decide Monday we're going to rehearse the first act in the morning and the second act in the afternoon, and Tuesday we're doing the second act in the morning and the third act in the afternoon, and then Wednesday we're going to go back to the first act and then the third act, and then you just kind of keep working it until it starts to come together. And so that's kind of what we did is we called the first week rehearsal and the second week the shoot. But to be honest, like we just shot everything from the moment we got there. We shot, and one of the other things that I did is, okay, these guys are actors, so they're coming into audition and then to rehearse. That means they have scripts in their hands. That also means they don't have to be off book, right? And that was also really helpful because I'm not paying these guys a lot. They've got other jobs in between. It's like, okay, do me a favor, just come in with the script. I mean, get familiar with it, but don't memorize it. Let's see what it looks like for you to find the right accent, work out the blocking. Like, let's just do all of that live,
Mhm.
and then that becomes part of it.
Yeah.
And that's what allowed us to be able to use all the footage. Otherwise, it was like I'd have to wait for things to feel polished, and then we'd be shooting, and that cuts your time in half. I mean, think about the amount of time you lose when you're just, losing 45 minutes between shots, and you get 5 to 7 shots a day if you're lucky on a really,
Yeah.
10 cranking through 10 pages a day on an independent film, you know, for
Yeah.
12 to 15 or 19 days. I mean, these movies get made in 19 days. That's nothing compared to what people used to make films with.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. Getting back to kind of the idea of improv, like I said, I've not done anything improv, and I envy people who can do like the oneers because if you can do a good oneer, you're done.
Right.
You shoot it. All right. That makes the post production a lot easier.
Right.
With regard to improv and from a director's perspective, when do you kind of like control the actor and how do you know when to stop them if they're doing like a good riff on something? Do you just let them go? When do you call cut? How do you kind of balance that?
I mean, you know, uh, with this, I mean, yeah, the question of improv, most of the time it's like what I've learned is to let them do the thing that they're really committed to doing because I don't even know if it's going to be any, like how do I know that they're not going to come up with something absolutely brilliant? Very often they do.
Yeah.
And I think, the more mature I've become as a filmmaker, the more I've learned to kind of let it go and just let them have, let's see what they're going to do. And if I
Hmm.
have ideas, I will usually wait until, whatever version of a cut we would have, it would be about like, okay, let's now try this way. Like I remember we had one take, which was one of the later takes that we did with Kareem, where I said, okay, let's. What if Giuliano decides that he's never acting again because he's sick of this stuff and he's sick of being cast this way? Like, what does that audition look like? What does it look like when you come into an audition and you're just going to burn you're burning the barn down, right? And really interesting things happen even when you just give one actor a note. It's like it's not like I would give them all notes. It's like sometimes I would just choose one actor and say, what happens if this is the way that you do it, and then it would change everybody else. I think with really seasoned actors, and I got to work with some really great people on this. They just know how to do it in the moment, right? They're not looking for, even if you find the right line reading, if you just try to repeat it, it suddenly gets dead. So it's like you have that one. I mean, what it meant really in the end was this was a really hard movie to edit because there were so many different little variations. It was almost like we never had one take that was the same as the next. And so what it meant that it was that when we were editing, we started with 250 hours of footage from
Oh my
from
God.
five
Oh
cameras,
no.
right? So think about that. So
Oof.
five cameras running roughly 6 hours a day for 10 days.
Oh my
That's what
God.
it ended up with. So what I had to do was I basically had to become my editor's AE, and I was the one logging a lot of the footage because I was the only one who knew what I was thinking during each
Hmm.
take when that happened. And so if Kareem or Musa did this like one thing that I was like in the moment, I was like, oh man, that's brilliant. That's something that has to go in the film. No assistant editor who's just grinding through footage would ever have been able to pick that up. So just logging the footage, I think, took us a few months, right? Just to be able to figure out like where is everything, how does it correspond to the script, which take, what part of the script is this covering, and just getting that done. We did kind of a binder. It took us a couple months just to put together a binder of where every take was in the script and how we could rank them. And then we just started doing an assembly. But I'm telling you, man, that first assembly was almost 3 hours long, and there were always options of like, okay, there's a different look, there's a different this, there's a different that. I mean, my editors, like, honestly, I don't envy their job, and I think they did such an amazing job.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going through my own film right now, and even though it's pretty well scripted and it's just a standard narrative, like there is nuance that I know in my head that I
Nobody
filmed
else
for
does. Yeah.
that nobody, yeah, it's not really clear on the page, and so another editor was just gonna kind of, they'll do their best, but at the
Right.
end of the day, I know what I want, and I
Exactly.
can't even imagine trying to like parse to 250 hours of footage. But
Yeah.
when you know what you want, obviously it's a lot easier because you know what you want, you know what the vision you're trying to achieve, so it's not as difficult. But still, just logging everything and organizing all that, it's like, oof,
I don't even know. I mean, for you, I mean, the funny thing is that you think you know what you want, but then you do an assembly of like the script that you wrote,
yeah,
and you look at it and you're like, well, that's not it. Like I know that's the script, and I know that's the sequence, and I know that's the order, and that's the scene.
yeah.
And I think that's the part of editing that's really filmmaking. I think, editing is a great place to start out as a director, I think, because it really teaches you how to construct a scene, and I think it affects the way you direct, right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
So that was an interesting part of it because like we did the assembly, it was exactly as written, and then it was like, well, this is boring as fuck. I'm like, I can't do anything with this, right? So then we really started the editing process.
Mhm. Yeah. So I love to get to the technical details because I always love that kind of nerdy stuff. Talk to me.
Sure.
You said 250 hours of footage. How much data are we talking about there?
Oh my God, I
How many
couldn't.
terabytes of data is
I
that?
I think it's like I have a RAID sitting behind me that has a version of has the footage, and my editor has another one that's duped, and I think it's like I think it might be a 100 terabyte system
Oh
that's
my God.
probably at 30 or 35 terabytes, right?
Wow.
And I've got it was probably the raw footage. I'm just trying to think of the drives that we had. The raw footage was probably only like 6 or 7 terabytes. But
Oh,
then I think I don't. It's been so long because I'm trying to think of how many drives we had. We had like five. No, maybe we had five terabyte drives. So it's in the 20 to 30 terabyte
yeah.
range.
Okay.
But just I can't imagine how many different edits we have of this film. And there's
Oh, wow.
probably like two other films in there that I can make. In fact, I thought of it as I thought of having originally I thought of doing it as like the movie, the performance on one, like as a gallery thing, and then the rehearsal, right?
Yeah.
So the movie kind of became both. But I thought
Okay.
of it like, what if you had on one wall the rehearsal, and then you go around to the other side, and it's like all the directing parts, and then the performance. But like with 250 hours, you could make like three or four different movies, right? You wouldn't need to. I wouldn't need to shoot anything. And there's
There you
probably very
go.
different movies in there.
Well, if you make a sequel, call it yes, repeat, no, repeat.
Right,
Just
right.
that's what I would call the sequel.
Redux. Yeah, I mean,
Oh yeah, yeah. The director's cut.
right.
What did you shoot it on?
I think it was a Sony FX9, maybe. I
Okay.
remember like we had four of those going on dolly tracks, and then we had probably the BTS crew probably was just shooting on whatever Canon 5D version or 7D or something like that. And then I also had bought four small mirrorless Sony cameras to give to the actors because I was like,
Oh.
okay, now what about you guys just shoot whatever you want, like in the green room. Let's see what
Hmm.
we can integrate. But they, because they were on a revolving stage for almost every day, full day, every cast member, they had a green room and they were like, we don't want to shoot in the green room. We don't want to shoot anything when we're not on stage because it's a lot. It's intense.
Yeah.
Because again, they're used to these things where you get 30 to 45 minutes off between shots. And there
Right.
was no downtime.
Right.
Couldn't afford it, and also, just didn't work out that way. And it was great for me, but exhausting for them.
Sure. Sure. Speaking of exhausting, I mean, how was the overall? Like, I mean, we're talking 10 days, so what, 2 5-day weeks, 12
Two
hours a
5 day
day?
weeks, yeah. Couldn't afford that. 8 hour days.
Eight
Couldn't
hour
afford any
days.
overtime. Just was working with SAG minimum. Had them for 2 hours of hair and makeup, costume, and then probably 6 hours on the stage. Tried to shoot everything. Told the crew, even if we call cut, that's for the actors. If we're gonna start talking. We're gonna start arguing. Do not cut. Keep shooting. Like while we're debating things, keep shooting because of course we're going to have arguments about this. We've got one actor is Lebanese, one actor is Israeli, one actor is Palestinian, one actor is British Iranian. So like these are people who actually understand this and have opinions, and
Hmm.
so we're going to have a difference of opinions, and that stuff is like the real stuff, right? That's
Right.
not even the
Yeah.
scripted stuff. So the idea was always to document that. So they didn't, you know, like I think we discussed this on the round table. It's like we had to stagger the cards so that we never ran out of cards on the same camera. And
Right.
the nice thing was we had a lighting grid. We really didn't move the lighting around much, unless I think there was one day where we had a dolly and boom and a jib arm that we had to move some lights around for because it was floating above us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. And so all shot on 4K, I assume, right?
All shot on 4K. Finished it. It took I would say it took almost 18 to 24 months to get it done.
Yeah.
We
Wow.
we showed the first act, which is really the first 30 minutes or so in a gallery. Probably 4 months later, that was just like just getting it done. And then we really went into the feature part of it, which took another year and a half at least before we could
Wow.
really get out there to festivals and kind of go through that process, which, as you know, is its own. It's like a whole other movie you're making.
Yeah. When did you shoot it exactly? 22 or
20
21?
21, I think late, the second part, like the second year of COVID, where we are all thinking like it's all going to
We're
be
in the
okay.
clear.
Yeah, we're in the clear. This is going to change. Like, I think we were, oh, I remember, yeah, we were constantly waiting for SAG to revise their on-set criteria for what you needed to do,
Right.
and hoping that they would ease the protocols, because the protocol itself was probably added $10,000 or $12,000 to the script, to the production,
Wow.
because it's like having to have somebody come in, the
Sure.
testing, the,
Yep.
all the stuff that went into it, and they never did. It was July of 21, I think, when we actually shot it, because my wife was like 7 months pregnant and my son was born in September, and she's like, I can't believe you're making a movie while I'm about to have a baby. And I was like, I'll tell you.
I'm sure she loved that.
She did not. She did not. I mean, I remember sitting back there. I got a setup, and my editor had a setup at his place. And I remember sitting back there with my newborn son, just logging footage, just watching footage, and sleeping
Yeah.
on me. Yeah,
I mean, that's what you do. You hold the milk bottle, or
totally,
whatever. You got them in your arm, and then you're just
totally.
kind of like doing
Just
something. I'd be playing
hours
video
on it.
games while I was,
Yeah,
rocking my kid to sleep or,
totally. I
feeding
mean,
him. So
yeah. So I had to, it was just, it was awesome though. I mean, it was a great process, but it was, man, did it take a while to get that film in shape.
yeah, no, I don't doubt that. And now it's out there. It's on Apple TV Plus. It's where else
Apple
is it?
TV, I think Amazon Prime, and then I think all the kind of cable services for, pay-per-view, that kind of stuff.
Right.
We're trying to get it out there and just trying to get people to talk about it. It's a tricky movie to get people to see.
Yeah.
And it's not like a feel good. It's not an easy movie to watch. But I think when people actually spend the time with it, it's like a heavy meal. When people spend the time with it, they appreciate it. But they people will often say like, "Oh man, that was really confusing. Like I don't, there's a lot of stuff about it." And I think that's what we intended. So I think it's always, when people say that, they always say that with reservation. But my response is always, well, then you get it. You get the film, because the idea is that it's supposed to kind of be dizzying, that you don't know who's who and what's what, and it's like it's the way I described it to my daughter, who's now 12, who was like, who knows, 9 or 10 at the time, was I showed her the Laurel and Hardy, Who's on First. Was it Laurel and Hardy that did Who's on First? Yeah, Laurel and Hardy's the Who's on First thing, right? It was like intentionally confusing, kind of bending language until it almost breaks.
Right. Right. Well, good. Then mission accomplished for me because
You
I
got
was
it.
confused most of the time. I'm trying to
Right,
like, what is the
right.
narrative? I'm trying. Did I lose it?
No, that's the
So
point, right? Is how
am I
little do
going
you,
insane?
yeah, how little do you need to hold on to before you've kind of completely lost it? I just wanted you just barely holding on. I mean, initially I was trying to cast three actors that looked exactly alike, and that's how the casting process started. Was I was just trying to find three bearded Middle Eastern men that could be kind of categorized and reduced in the most derogatory way into like, you people all look the same, like that kind of thing, right?
Right.
Because I wanted them to be interchangeable. It's like a shell game. Like I wanted you to not be able to exactly keep up, because you were like, which bearded guy am I looking at? That didn't exactly work out, obviously, because the best actors didn't look exactly alike and they weren't as tall as each other. But the suggestion of it, I think, is still there.
Yeah.
At one point, I even considered like casting lookalikes, like just trying to literally just find guys who you almost couldn't tell the difference, but they just weren't good actors,
Yeah.
right? And so it came
Yeah.
down to good performances, I think, are more important.
Yeah. That was a challenge I had in my film because I had to cast the same person in different generations.
Oh yeah,
So you have a child version, a 20-year-old, a 40-year-old, and an 80-year-old version of the same character over different time periods. And like they have to look generally the same. Like
right.
I was deciding between two actors based solely on their eye color because it's
Nice.
like I can't have you because you have a distinctly different eye color than every other actor. and like I can't have you wear colored contacts, so it's like all
And were
kinds of
they
different things.
were they good actors anyway, or
They were
was
all great
there
actors,
yeah,
absolutely. All
yeah,
all the key cast were great actors, and that was the main thing. It's like balancing between you're a great actor but you don't look the part,
right,
and you're a great actor or you're a bad actor but you look the part, right? So it's like trying to find that right balance. And I did. I feel I did. They're
right,
not like one to one, like, you have to
yeah,
have a suspend disbelief, right? You're
totally,
obviously looking at four different people,
totally,
right? And like I don't have the technology to be, age people up and age
of
people down.
course.
I couldn't have one actor play all four
Well, you
roles like
kind of
that.
do now, but you didn't then, probably. I mean,
I mean, if it exists, I don't have the budget for it.
right,
I
right.
mean, there probably is ways to do it, but I don't have the capability nor the budget,
I
I
feel like
think, for.
there's got to be an AI solution for that now. I feel like we do have the budget.
I
I don't
mean,
know, but I think it exists. Like I have a feeling that we might be able to do it pretty soon ourselves.
yeah, I didn't want to hang my hat on that
No,
and
I get it.
hinge
I get
like
it.
the
I'm just
entire
saying,
film success
of
over,
course.
can
I'm
I
just
make
saying,
it look convincing,
right.
with old, because yeah, but on the other hand too, they have to interact with one another, and just trying to
Totally.
create a film with the same actor interacting with themselves, it's like
Right.
it's like I was doing it on a very shoestring budget, so I'm like, what can I get away with? And I just figured the easiest thing was hire four separate actors who
Right.
all sort of could convincingly be the same person,
Yeah,
you
you have to
know?
you have to get them to. I was reading something about Scorsese and The Irishman. When De Niro, they have to de-age him, right, in a lot of the
Right.
scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying like that he would have to have him do takes, and he'd be like, okay, Bobby, you got to do that one again because you're still getting up like a 70-year-old.
Yes.
You know,
Well,
like
famously in the what is it, the Painter or whatever it's called, the House Painter or whatever the movie is called, where they did that specific technique. You have a scene where it's, the guy is like beating somebody up, but they look like a 70-year-old when they're doing it, and they're supposed to
right.
be in their 20s or 30s. So yes,
Yeah,
that is
you
the
can't
risk.
de-age movement.
No, not yet.
It's hard to do that.
You need to find another actor and then stick their head on that actor
Right,
who's
which
younger.
you probably could do. I'm sure like now it's like something I could do in my living room.
Yeah, right. Or the other issue with de-aging, like with Harrison Ford in the Indiana Jones movie, you have a young Harrison Ford who sounds like an old man,
Right.
So it's
The
like,
voice.
got to de-age the voice as well.
That's
So
true. Yeah,
there
his
are a
voice
lot
has
of
gotten old. His voice has gotten old, Harrison Ford.
there are a lot of hurdles to be in place. So, with the last few minutes we have with you, I just want to talk a little bit about your career. What got you into filmmaking? Where did you start? Looking back at some of your previous work, like Two Points of Failure and Stuck in Neutral.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've been around for a good 25 years at least. That's when I think your first film came out. So, what got you into filmmaking, and what kind of kept you in it?
Well, I think I mean, this is some of the conversation we had on the round table last time. I feel like I'm kind of a journeyman, right? Because my interest has always been in film, but I've done a lot of different things. When I came out of college, I spent about a decade working as a film executive, and I started out working in feature development, and ended up working for some pretty big producers as a development executive. And the last stint I had was with a producer named Mark Gordon, who was had made Speed and was making Saving Private Ryan. And at the time, we were developing The Patriot, which is a Mel Gibson film that I got my first credit as an associate producer on. And I really was, I'm a movie lover, right? Like as a kid, it was really something that was like a huge part of my life, which is why I ended up coming to Hollywood. But I think the frustration that I had was I always wanted to be the director. Like I got to work, in these rooms with amazing writers and directors and A-list people, and I was always like, how do you become the director? So I went back to school, studied photography and fine art, and then actually had a very kind of 5 to 7 years or so of being a photographer and working as a entertainment and editorial photographer. I was shooting celebrity portraits, a lot of music packaging, album packaging, stuff like that. And that's kind of what started the first film project that I had, which was Stuck in Neutral, which was a documentary that I started making about a band. And what was interesting to me about that is all the films I'd seen about bands so far had the same kind of narrative that was always like, oh man, things were really hard and then we made it. And I was always frustrated by that because most of the people that I knew that were in bands, they didn't make it. right? It was like we worked really hard. We had a lot of connections. We almost got close. We had, this person producing our album, and my dad was this famous person. But then it didn't come together, and that's actually what the music business was. So I did this documentary with. I was working with the producer, one of the producers I worked on. Yes, Repeat No on Sarah Salovitz. We worked with this band for a very long time. Went on the road with them. Did a bunch of tour dates. Slept in a truck. Really got to like what that experience was. And I mean, being in a band is brutal, man. Especially when you're a young band. Even if they had some juice, but they got a record deal and then it didn't come together. It's like all this stuff. And in the end, they didn't make it. One guy started working in IT, another guy became a psychologist, another guy is like a DJ. It's like they just went on with their lives. And I was really interested in those kinds of stories where things don't work out. I didn't know that they wouldn't work out, but if you're putting money on a band, chances are they're not going to work out. Like, because that's just the ratio of bands that succeed versus bands that don't. And so that was the first project I had, and then I was in graduate school getting my MFA, and did this film, 2 Points of Failure, with the other producer on this film, Braxton Pope, who is, he is an independent film producer. This is what he does as a living, and it's a hard, it's a slog. He's successful, works with great people, is just about to finish another film with Paul Schrader, has made a couple films with Schrader, but it's still a tough slog. And he and I collaborated on this film that was very experimental. Ended up going to Tribeca Film Festival and a bunch of festivals because of that, Rotterdam Film Festival, and again was very experimental. It was basically, we were kind of dissolving a piece of 8x10 sheet film, because it was about a film camera that Jean-Luc Godard tried to make from the budget of one of his films. He was trying to make a handheld 35 millimeter camera in like the late 70s, early 80s, because he had been working with the video Portapak, and he wanted something that was portable but could also shoot film. But it was a total failure because it was too loud. The motor was too loud to record sound, and it couldn't really focus. So I was really interested in that kind of failure, like this camera that can't do anything that a camera's supposed to do. And then, I went back to graduate school, was working on a PhD that I never finished. This film was basically the dissertation that I never wrote. But I was never so far out of loving film that I wanted to just totally give up on it. And I think being an academic is really interesting to me because I think it helps me generate really interesting ideas that are kind of complicated and dissonant and don't always make sense. But I really still want to make things that people can enjoy and can have an appeal to people, like in movies. So I'm kind of constantly going back and forth between, academia and Hollywood, and trying to find things that are, and this is kind of what I teach my students too, is look for ideas that are interesting and difficult, but try to make them accessible to people. Because when they name their favorite directors, the Michel Gondrys, the David Finchers, those people know their kind of academic theory up and down, but they know it so well that they just bury it in the film, right? And it's like, Christopher Nolan, same thing. Like, it's like hiding the vegetables in the pasta. Like, they just find a way to make it entertaining. And I think that's really the future of interesting movies. There's always going to be marvels, and there's days where I enjoy that stuff as much as the next person, but to really kind of push the medium past what it can be and make those movies like Inception or what have you, whatever those movies are that people are, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, whatever those movies are that people think are kind of the edge of cinema. I think you have to mine some really interesting ideas and figure out a way to make them appealing to just normal people. Otherwise, ideas go dead and movies go dead, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. All right. Well, I know we're going to be losing you here shortly, but I just wanted two quick questions. One, what do you have coming up next in sort of the filmmaking process here? What do you have on the works? And two, what's your favorite film, either of all time or recently?
Well, let's start off with the easy one to answer, which is what I'm working on next. I've been researching, because this is how it starts for me, is I got to throw myself into a lot of research because making movies is so difficult that if I'm going to commit myself to something, it has to almost be impossible for me to not do it, right? So I toy with ideas constantly, but it's like the amount of effort it takes to get a movie made and make a movie to me is so tremendous that it's almost like I have to be, it has to be impossible for me to not do it. So right now I'm just researching, I think hopefully will end up as something like some kind of espionage thriller, psychedelic espionage thriller is how I'm calling it, kind of inspired by MK Ultra and all that kind of stuff that the CIA is working on, that's set in a kind of bipolar fascist democracy, because I think that's a very relevant kind of milieu. And I feel like this is something, I'm interested. I'd say I'm AI curious, but not like I don't want to give everything up to it. But I do think for independent filmmakers, it's mixing live action with AI visual effects or special effects. Like it gives people like you and I access to tools that I don't think we would have otherwise. And I think that's kind of where I don't ever see it replacing real actors. Like I don't buy it. Like I don't really see that. But I do see the ability to do things that we couldn't otherwise do because we wouldn't have the budgets. I mean, it's painstaking and it takes so much work and it is not easy to be precise. And it is like, there's a lot of nonsense about people saying like, this is how it's going to change everything. It's still so much work having worked with it. It's like, it's so hard to get things to be precise. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about. I would say the two films that I could call inspirations for myself. I mean, I think that Charlie Kaufman film, Synecdoche, New York, is a really awesome film. That's something that always inspires me. Every time I see it, it kind of leaves me legless. It's just like I'm devastated every time I watch it. And then, I'm a big fan of Terrence Malick's films. Big fan of Mike Leigh's films. I love big budget films too, but I mean those are the films that I always go to are those kind of those filmmakers and the kind of stuff that they do, complicated and not always easy to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think A24 is probably the leading charge,
right,
in terms of studios who are pioneering or pushing those types of films and filmmakers.
And I'm so happy that they exist.
Oh yeah, me too. I agree.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Michael Dahan. Really appreciate it. Again, remind people where they can go see your film.
Amazon, Apple TV Plus, your local cable system usually will have it on kind of a pay-per-view system, so look for it there as well.
Okay, great. I'll put some links in the show notes. So again,
thank you
so much for your time. I know you have to go, but have a great day. And
thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Good luck in the future of filmmaking, and hopefully we'll have you back on the show and in roundtable or other formats.
Oh, I love that. That was
or
really
your next
fun.
project.
That was
would
really
love to
great.
talk to you about that.
Thank you.
Awesome. Great. Have a great one, Michael.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.